Just my lighting here. Yeah, we're live. It is 7:10. I'm a little bit late, but tonight we're going to talk about Super Coupe Performance. That's the name of the company that many years ago supplied some stuff to me to do some testing on a Super Coupe that was owned by one of the guys that worked at West Tech, Steve. So shout out to Steve for doing that test with me a long time ago. He eventually left West Tech. In fact, kind of left right in the middle of what we were doing with the Super Coupe. I was hoping to do more testing with it, but that did not work out, unfortunately. But we did a few things, and I think he did an exhaust and a pulley and stuff. And I think he was doing a blower upgrade when all of this kind of went away. But it makes me wonder, and looking back at some of these photos, these are photos I just discovered recently in some top secret file that I haven't looked at for years and years and years. But in looking at the blower, it had me wonder, hey, what's the difference between this supercharger and the one that I've been doing all the testing with on the M90 from the 3800? And there are a number of differences. So I wanted to talk about those because it might be interesting to do a comparison test. But we have to understand what the differences are between the blowers to understand then what would be required to be able to kind of compare them. The first thing is, obviously, they didn't build anywhere near as many Super Coupes, which is a very kind of specialty vehicle. They didn't build anywhere near as many of those with that supercharged V6 with the M90 on it as they did 3800 GM versions. I mean, they built millions of those, I'm sure. So the disparity in the production numbers is dramatic. And so that means that the availability between the two is, I've seen, I think, 2 Super Coupes the whole time I've been going to wrecking yards. I see a half a dozen every time I go to the wrecking yard of the 3800 stuff of that M90. So in terms of availability, even if we figured out through testing that the M90 on the Super Coupe is better, it's just not available. I mean, you see some online and stuff. So if you really had your heart set on one, although if it's not something that you had, or there wasn't something available immediately in terms of kit wise, like the Super G adapter that Tom Demuse does, the adapter plate, I don't know why you'd pick that. I mean, you'd just pick if you're going to buy a blower, you just pick a bigger one because you could get an M1, a 112 or a 122 or something. And then, they have the ability to support more power. But what other differences are if we glance over that and say, hey, look, one of them obviously is more available. And so if I was going to get one, I probably would get that. I'm pretty sure that the rotor packs are probably similar. I'm sure they're both Eaton rotor packs. Eaton supplied the stuff for both of those. The housings, though, are pretty dramatically different. We expect a difference in the snout just because of the motor configuration and where they're mounting it and how the accessories are done and stuff. So it's not surprising that the hub would be, or that the snout would be different. It's certainly a different length and maybe even a different configuration. I've never compared the two directly to see if one would bolt on the other. I don't think it will. A lot of times they do, specialized bolt patterns and stuff. And so there's just not, it's the odds of that front part of the housing being exactly the same and accepting both rotor packs. I just don't think that that's going to be the case. But if it did, you pulled it off and put it on there, that would be awesome. But I don't think that that's going to happen. When you look at the housing, the back section of the housing that the rotor pack slides in, that's definitely different. It's dramatically different between the two. If you look underneath, I have photos of what the bottom side of the blower looks like. So the discharge side is definitely different. The size of the discharge, the shape of it's different. I'd have to measure it to see for sure, but it looks like the little noise slots, the anti-noise slots or whatever, those look like they're a little bit longer on this Ford version. The inlet is definitely different on the Ford version because this was designed to run as a factory intercooled thing. So they didn't just take the inlet into the blower and then discharge it down into the motor. They took the inlet into the blower and then discharged it to an intercooler and then back into the motor. So it's a completely different thing. It's nice that it was intercooled and has a cool like cast aluminum tube that says intercooled on it. Just wanted the tube just because it says that on it. But having a factory intercooler is obviously a good idea. It allowed Ford. I think that the Super Coupes ran higher boost pressure from the factory than the 3800s did. although the power outputs were actually a little bit higher on the GM versions. But the you know the Super Coupe was a in its day was a pretty fast vehicle. I mean, it was on par with probably with a 5 liter Mustang. And then I remember they had that, and then they had the Turbo Coupe, and then they had the Probe that was also a turbo deal, and then they had the 5 liter Mustang. So not what we would consider super performance deals now, given how crazy the power wars have gone. But back then, these were all legitimate 140-mile-an-hour cars. So it's pretty impressive, back in the day. And the Super Coupe was cool because it was heavier, like than a Mustang. It was more expensive, but it was also more aerodynamic. So it was, given its power output, it did fairly well. It would have been nice if they would have had a little bit more maybe performance oriented motor underneath it, because an intercooled supercharged deal was, they were on the right path with that. But it would be interesting to see, even despite these differences, the inlet difference, the discharge difference, and all that. It'd be interested to it would be cool to be able to run those like back to back to see what the difference is, if there is a difference in flow. I mean, that might be an easy thing to do on a blower dyno, set it up with plates and stuff, and measure it, and that way you could actually see which blower flows more and could therefore support more power. And then also, if you had a blower dyno, you could also measure what the losses are. That's probably comparable, I would think, unless one has a significant change in the flow rate. The parasitic loss should be comparable, at least, I think. And so, but if you were to test them, if you were to compare them, like on the same motor, what we would have to do is do like we did with the LS that had shown a whole bunch of times, and we will show again, because I'm going to do some more testing with it now that we have the ported versions from the guys at Jokers. We'll run the ported version on there and see how much power we get. And then with that TIC intercooler, we'll also run that on there, and we now have spacers for that to raise the blower up, which is good. But if we were to want to run the M90 from the Super Coupe and compare it to the 3800 M90, we could compare both the Gen 3 and the Gen 5 blowers, although the Gen 5 blower is quite a bit later than the Super Coupe. And so it's like comparing different generations of motors. It's like an LS versus small block Chevy. It's not really that fair of a comparison, because it's understandable that technology came a long way in that period of time when everything was improving, and the Gen 5 blower was a upgrade over the Gen 3 blower. And so it'd be interesting maybe just to do the Gen 3 versus the Ford blower. But what you'd need is, like, we have the adapter plate that Tom did for mounting that blower on an LS, and then being able to run that blower on the plate with an inlet on it into the throttle body and stuff. And then you'd have to do a different plate to mount that Ford blower wherever it needed to go, depending on how long the snout was on the Ford, what the length difference was, and where its position was relative to to lining up the belt. But you'd have to make another plate and then just run that blower. And then the interesting thing, or the thing that would potentially create problems, is that you'd need to make sure that the inlets on both of them were comparable. Now, I'd have to see what the inlet is on the Ford and see where we are there. But if one of them has a bigger inlet than the other one, then it's going to have the potential to make more power, because the inlet going into the blower is going to help determine what the flow rate is of the blower, and the discharge and the boost coming out of it. If it is bigger, that's fine. But if it's bigger, but it was restricted by a smaller factory throttle body or whatever, we'd have to look at all that stuff and see. And then once we decided, hey, look, let's run both of them at the same speed and stuff. Honestly, it would not surprise me that if we tested it, both of them at 7 or 8 pounds or whatever, 10 pounds, you could pick whatever number you want. If we did that they would be comparable. But it still would be interesting to see, because I think that Ford blower actually looks like it might be a little better than the Gen 3 blower, just judging by a visual examination of the blower, because it's just Steve there holding it. But looking at the discharge, it looks different. It looks bigger than the 3800 GM version of it. So I'm curious to see. That's the only time that I've ever looked at one of these. And again, shout out to the guys at let's see, Super Coupe Performance, I think. Yes, Super Coupe Performance. Got some pictures of they've got a crank and drive pulley set up there. I think we put a mass air meter on this thing, a different pulley on the blower, an exhaust, it looks like. I can't remember what the power change was. I'll see if I can look. This was done on the chassis dyno, so I'd need to get the chassis dyno data to take a look at that. But it's cool stuff. I mean, I like doing obviously direct back-to-back comparisons like that, and hadn't ever done one on Super Coupe, so this was a cool thing. I wish that it hadn't stopped like halfway through, and we could have kind of finished it all and see if that thing can make some reasonable power. It'd have been cool. We'll see what you guys have going on this night. I've got to do a poll here. As an update too, Brian just sent me over test data on the new head that he has, a Canavalve LS head, and they're making a cathedral port version, which is what they were testing, and then also a rec port version. And the cathedral port version made more than, I think that it made more than the other rec port heads, because they were testing it on a 6.2, and they were this thing was making pretty good power, making 650 or 660. So it's a pretty healthy motor. A big, it's a 6.2 with a big cam in it, and they were testing it with a Trinity intake manifold, so they're running it out to 7,500 or so. And so far, it looks like that cathedral port version of that Canavalve head was up quite a bit from the more popular rec port version of the rec port heads, the aftermarket rec port heads. So it's pretty, the LS3 based heads. So it's pretty good stuff. I mean, it'll be interesting to see once it's all done and ready for production pieces. And then they're also going to do the LS3 version, which we hope is going to be at least the equal of the cathedral port one, but maybe even more. We'll see. And then hopefully they'll also test it on, maybe a bigger motor. And also I'd like them to test it on a smaller motor. I wanted them to test it on something that's just because guys are going to want to know. And the reality is there are a lot more cammed LS3s running around than there are, super high end ones. But so I'd be curious to see. And what normally happens on something like that is when you have a really good set of heads, but you don't have enough motor to draw what that head's capable of, the gains are usually not as good. But this thing has really impressive, like low and especially mid-lift flow numbers. It's an impressive deal. And the cool thing is that head that they're running on these 6.2, 4065 bore LS3 stuff will also fit on a 5.3 and a 4.8. So if you're wanting to make 1 million horsepower 5.3 or 4.8, and hopefully we'll test it on that 5.3 that I have, which will be kind of super cool. I don't know. Again, we probably already have more head than we need on those ported 220 heads. Those are probably about the best small bore head that I've seen in terms of the LS. I don't know that I've run across a better set of heads than that, but it would be cool if these other ones are. That will be a good test. I'm excited about that. So let's see what you guys got going on. Shout out to everybody that was here on the live feed earlier today. First 100% all the way through the curve. I mean, all the way through the live feed. It's remained at 100%. It was our first poll that ever did that. So shout out to all you guys that were part of that poll. Does anybody remember what the poll was? M90 on M90 action. That's good. Greetings, Tim, Supercharge, Gary, Eric, Green Bass Boost. Crawfish, what's going on? What are what are my what? Green Bass, you took a header on your 49cc bike today? Messed up my elbow. I've hurt my elbow and back. 39 miles an hour for going through, and that's nice. Thinned out the gas diesel mix. Worked good. Give me another 50 RPM, or was it 25 or 50? I think it was 50. That was either up periscope or down periscope with Kelsey Grammer. That was the engine guy. He was cool. He was also in the Avengers. GT45 turbo, or should I spend the money and get an expensive one? How much power are you trying to make? Hickory. Yeah, the GT45s, if you search for GT45, about a bajillion of them will come up. There's lots of them out there. Brian Tooley sells them. DNA, I think, is the ones we got them from. Lots of different guys have them. Todd, what's going on? Let's go 2 for 2, perfect poll. Yeah, that's not, just 1 for 1 was more than enough. Watching some Monty Python. Are you watching Holy Grail? eBay or diesel forums, classified or local Craigslist. You'll need to research which turbo for your setup and goals. Yet you don't need to do that. You just need to ask, how much power do you want to make? If you want to know how much power to make, I can tell you what turbo to put on. Going on a 5.3 with a blow-through carb, okay, that's good. But how much power do you want to make? Just that's what determines what size the turbo is. I want a Ford 3.8 blower for my Jeep. Twin HX35s. Trying to make somewhere around 1,000 wheel horsepower 93 with a turbo L83 using a TIC Performance low pro setup without methanol. Is it possible since the interstellar lowers the inlet air temperature so much? The thing that you need to worry about on an L83 is how are you going to get enough fuel to it? That's my question. And are you going? And you're trying to get 1,000 wheel horsepower at 93? Look at the bones. It's got big pointy teeth. Love me some Monty Python. I don't see why someone would go for the Super Coupe M90 over the GM M90, considering the price of each. Is there a big disparity between them? That's one thing I didn't look at. I know that availability and usually price and availability kind of go hand in hand. So if they're not available, then the price would be more. And like I said, it's a specialized car. So maybe people think now it's a classic. So if you're restoring that, you need it's restoration prices now. Okay, how would you throw in a freshly built 5.3 NA T56 built for an 86 Fox body? What are you trying to achieve with the motor? So there's like cams ranging from stock all the way up to the biggest that will fit. And all of those cams will work in that combination because it's a 5.3 with a manual transmission and a Fox body. All that's fine. But everybody's 5.3 T56 86 Fox body, their needs for that combination are not the same. So do you want it to idle good? Do you want it to get good fuel mileage? Do you want it to run 8s at the drag strip? What is it you want it to do? And that will help hone in on what the camshaft is. Normally, my recommendation is like Truck Norris kind of size camshafts. That works good. And then if you want to go bigger, there are certainly bigger ones than that. But as you go bigger, you trade drivability and stuff. Do you remember Mike? Yes, I know Mike. Put 2 Super Coupe blowers on a 460. Cool. Bullseye Performance made a hot side for the HX35 and HX40. I've seen O-ring seals and LS exhaust manifolds. What situations would require this? I can't imagine they last long. What are they made of? I thought that they were like Viton or something. I thought that they were almost like a rubber O-ring seal. And I was surprised that they would last. I don't ever use them. Whenever we bolt anything on, we use a factory style MLS exhaust gaskets. So Crawfish is telling you what's going on with those O-rings. Ever considered cooling fuel with the AC system, chill non-return rails with some super richy contraption? I tried cooling fuel before, and on an EFI setup, it didn't seem to make much of a difference. On the carbureted stuff, it seemed to make a little bit of a difference when Engine Masters tested. I wasn't there for that test, but that's what they said. You're talking about the metal ring or the donut style gaskets that have been used forever. I don't know if that's directed at them. I don't know. We just use MLS exhaust gaskets. They're like 3 layers of stainless steel. Uh-oh, Rover's in the house. Oh, the O-ringed exhaust ports. Yeah, I haven't done that on anything. Wonder what would happen if you put a full race clutch, flywheel, and race diff on a stock driveline. I know when I had a race clutch, a race style clutch, a puck clutch, and a pressure plate that had no Marcel in it. It was not fun to drive on the street. It was very chattery. The no brakes. This was let's see. I think it's more than that. It's 660, 659.4. So it did good. That's good power. Yep, all the rec port guys gonna come unglued. Here we go. I'm back. XTD clutch, 75 clutch on stock, D16 vibrates, hurts the knees. Yeah, we ran some heavy duty clutch stuff in the Honda, but never. I don't think that the one that we ran in the Bonneville Honda was a puck clutch though. Saw it on a video clip yesterday too. They cut channels in the head around the ports and O-rings go inside the head, and manifold presses it to when they bolt it down. Can you do a 5.7 Hemi carb distributor conversion? You don't need to do a distributor conversion. You just can put a carburetor on the Hemi the same way that you do. They have the same, MSD has the same thing, the ignition controller that you use on an LS. Oh yeah, Tim, I think it was. The question was, do you guys want dyno results up on the screen when I'm talking about that stuff? So I'll stream this stuff differently. Is there a benefit to making the intake runners cathedral-like in cross-section with conventional rectangular ports, tiny rover, I think 289? I'm not a believer that the shape makes a difference. What's the best setup for reliable, good horsepower 6-liter currently in an El Camino? So tell me how much power you want to make, because the stock 6-liter, the way that we run it, makes about an LQ4 with 317 heads on the factory truck intake manifold, makes about 400. And so you can get to easily 100 horsepower more than that with cam and springs. Dyno information at the beginning of the live. Yep. Now at the cat flange. The left is a metal ring. The right is a graphite metal ball. Down periscope. Yeah, that was good. I got a base tune done and most of the configuration for a Mega Squirt 3 Evo done for my turbo 4-liter Jeep Cherokee. What year is the Cherokee? on staying net and 4-eye pride. Our man Dave removed and dissected the MN12 SC3800 blower. Is that the Gen 3 blower? I'm not familiar with MN12. I don't know what that is. Somebody needs to make Ford 2V 4.6 lower intake manifolds for these things. $50 RPM could have won me some races. Yeah, they were talking about in the sub. They were talking about top speed. For whatever that's worth. Just watch the Black Knight scene in Attack Rabbit. So good. Richard, would you need carbon seals on a carbureted draw-through turbo? I think for long term you would. In fact, I talked to the guys from Precision when I was at MPMC about that. I was in a test cell working on a Phenom 300 shock absorber. That's better than the Phenom 200, right? Waiting for warm weather before junkyard, building my 5.3 for boost, going for 1200 flywheel. It's a flesh wound. Cut your arm off. No, you haven't. What's that there? I've had worse. I've dealt with worse. Oh, you're a loon. Left a comment on another video. I only want 350 kilowatts. I don't know what that is. That way on my stock clutch, etc., is still good. The GT3582-ish turbo, enough not to cause problems on a Boss 290. The engine is 390 horsepower. How much is 350 kilowatts in like regular horsepower? Not M90 related. That doesn't matter. This is a good question and answer thing, so you get to ask whatever you want. I remember 20 years ago, you wrote an article. There's no way I wrote it 20 years ago because I couldn't possibly be that old because I'm only in my late 20s. Muscle Mustangs fast forwards, dynoing 2 identical engines at the same time, but a centrifugal blower ducted into engine B while spun for engine A. Did that happen? No, I've never done that. I was saying that's how you would have to test the power output, or that would be one way to test the parasitic loss of the blower would be to do that. Actually, you don't need to do that. They have blower dynos now, so we know exactly how much it takes to spin a variety of different things at different blower speeds and boost levels and flow rates. The holy hand grenade of Antioch. That's right. The number is 3. So crawfish, I'm scrolling back. Okay. I just want to see what you're talking about. Super Coupe M90. Haven't seen one under $450. That was missing things. Could probably dig around and find one, but you can trip over a Gen 3 and hit a Gen 5 on the way down. That would be nice. Easy way to add fuel on LT is use a Trinity intake, get a micro squirt on the fuel only mode for additional injectors. Yeah, and Holly has high rams for that too, that you guys do a combination of DI and port injection. Ford M90 is better simply because it doesn't require carving a hole in your firewall to hit the throttle body. I can just hear the first 8. What's the thing above the radio? Yeah, that one does stick back pretty far. I like fetch lavage, which is French for get the cow. Fetch lavage, fetch lavage, fetch lavage. Richard, 3/4 out of the Oldsmobile Intrigue would be easier worth it to install an M90 on it. Oh, you have the 3.4 out of it. I thought you said you have 3/4 out of it. That doesn't make any sense. You have to modify. I mean, you have to make a plate or something to put that on there, but blowers are always good. Did they do that with a turbo? If you're talking about testing it on a blower dyno, you can't do that on a turbo. Still scrolling back, trying to find out where I was. Here we go. Carbs can suffer from vapor log. Yes, they can. Vapor lock. Small V8, low RPM, torque question. Just per usual. Dan, what's up? You missed all the talk about V12 LS motors and V10 Ford modulars and Richard doing dyno results on the screen. We had our first 100% for the whole live feed for the whole hour or whatever. We had our 100% what are these called? Polls, 100% polls for the whole live feed. That's the first time it's ever happened. There's a Rolls-Royce Merlin 85 at my faculty, World War II V12, 48 valve, 27 liter, 2-speed supercharger, 1600 horsepower. Nice. Start putting the green screen to work. Yeah, we won't be doing that. M90 on a Lima 2.3, either EFI or draw through would work pretty well. Yep. On supercharged big block video, you mentioned the cam specs that seem large, but you downplayed them as not race. Is that because the engine is so big? Yeah, I said that they were more middle of the road. It slanted a little bit to the performance side, being a 255, 262 at 50, but real big race big blocks are in the 270, 280 range at 50, and then milder cams are in the 230-ish range, or even maybe a little bigger. That performance stuff is going to certainly be in the 240s. Carb conversion, I get a megajoule spark box, programmable, E-disc coils, and so very cost-effective setup. Good. Doesn't matter what seals are in the turbo for draw through. Yeah, you do need carbon seals for a draw through. You don't need them to run it on the dyno like I probably will do, but for long term, you should have a draw through, carbon seals on a draw through. Phenom is either 100 or 300. Jet plane. I know, but you missed that's a 220, 221 reference. Come on. Late to the show, I had both Gen 3 and supercharged M90. I think the Gen 3 might have bigger inlet, but the supercharged inlet triangulates into the helix of the rotor, which might make it good for a cut weld carb. The discharge out of the blower has a 4-bolt flange on the M90. It's because you can run the blower upside down, right? Kilowatt to horsepower conversions are funny. Yeah, I don't know what the kilowatt thing is. I don't really have a reference for that yet. I want to get around 400 to 550 horsepower. Those are really different combinations. A 400 horsepower one is stock. A 550 horsepower one is way modified. So you gotta tighten that up a little bit. Then it sounds like, Christian, that you're going to want something milder. So, a 6-liter truck Norris cam, maybe mill the 317 heads a little bit, and then put headers on it, and away you go. All right, we'll call it a draw. That's right. Looking good for the late 20s. Yeah, it's not the age, it's the mileage. That's right. LA3 will have too much PSI, port injection controller with FIC 1000 injector to supply extra fuel. Shadow Ops, you want him to go up to the 459, 469 cam, the red hot cam, or just go all the way to the LS3 stage 4 cam. That's actually the cam that they ran in this. So that the same cam that I have in the 5.3 is what they ran in this LS3, and it made 659. Have you seen the videos of the jet skis brothers who put twin turbo LSs in a jet ski? I saw the LS in the jet ski. I don't think I've seen the turbo version of that. I mounted a G54B and a Starion with 500 CFM 2-barrel. Ran good, but the head gaskets didn't last long. Richard, can I modify my Holley double pumper to be used with E85? Not really. You can put really big jets in it, but I don't know what the procedure would be for drilling out the metering block and stuff to actually make it work for E85. E85 just requires so much more fuel flow and a different fuel amount relative to the signal that it's getting. So I just don't think that would work. I don't know that I would try it, and maybe a really good carburetor guy might say, "Oh yeah, that's not going to be a problem at all." But I think I think almost everything is different on the 85 carburetor. A 27-liter V12 should deliver a broad torque curve, I would think. What is the RPM range of that thing? Is it 3,800 or something where it makes peak power? Do you know what the max horsepower for a 5.7 Hemi can make stock NA reliably long term, or would you recommend a stroker for the forged internals? I don't know. I'm not really sure I understand what you're trying to get at. If you do something to make more power, it's not going to ever drive like a stock one does. So it will be different than that. And it's also not going to last as long as a stock one does. You're not going to modify a motor and then have it be something that, like with my truck, has run for 330,000 miles. So that won't happen with a aftermarket cam in it and ported heads and things like that. That's just not realistic. So knowing that, then you have to decide, okay, how do I want the thing to drive around? Do I want it to drive around like stock, meaning mild cam, or do I not care as much about that and I'll put a converter in it and then I'll make a lot more power with the other cam? If you go to a bigger motor, which they have stroker versions available for that, it makes life a little bit better in terms of the drivability and stuff. But all of that is just more money. Scrolling back. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? African or European? I'm not sure. What is your favorite color? Red. I mean blue. Just seems like some granularity is needs for the pole. Just because there are 10 million transverse mount design M90 doesn't make them better. So now I have to make a wrong pole shirt too. That's right, Christopher. Do the math. It works out. Yep, trebuchet. Those are good. Trebuchets are serious. I'm not dead yet. It is a good trebuchet. I remember them throwing Mini Coopers with trebuchets. Have you tested the new BTR LS3 cannon valve heads yet? Yeah, we were just talking about that. That was part of this discussion early on. Brian just sent me over some dyno results. The Cathedral Port version made more than Rec Port aftermarket heads did. They made 659 on a LS3 short block with those heads and a Trinity intake manifold and their stage 4 LS3 cam. Last Fox body was 93. What do we do with witches? Burn them. %100% pull, that's right. She turned me into a newt. I got better. I wish I could use my leap years as birthdays. That's right. Then we only age every 4 years. Looks like you never revisited chilled fuel with the blower or turbo, but the blower or turbo is not going to change that though. Can you please put the poll question and results in the description or as a pinned comment in the video for those of us who missed the live stream? I guess, but I say what the poll is at the beginning of the video, so you know what the poll is, right? 2 days away from being a leap year baby. Nice. It's because I wasn't on that live feed. Dean, I'm sure you would have agreed as well. The M90 is not good because it won't easily install in the 462 valve. That's a big trebuchet. Come on. I got time for this nonsense. How much nitrous have you put through engines? What was your favorite and why? I don't know what you mean by my favorite, but I think that the most I have run a plate for all that the plate was worth. So it would do a 300 shot basically when we took the jets out and just ran the open plate. That's as much as either the solenoid that we had or the opening in the plate or the dispersion tubes in the plate itself. That's all that it would flow. It wouldn't flow any more nitrous. I've run more than that on a tunnel ram big block where we ran 2 plates on it. And I tried running a 500 shot on the Big Bang. I just remember I tried running a 500 shot on the Big Bang 5.3 and the nitrous one, and it blew the motor up. But that again, that was me, just like with the Big Bang 351 Windsor. So Dean, it has to be an imperial one, not just a regular one, not an imperial or a metric or a SAE. 0.745 kilowatts for horsepower for your kilowatt to horsepower conversion. So now I don't even remember what that number was. You just need to ask me how. Just need to give me the number in horsepower. Is there a rotary jet ski? That would be good, right? It should package fairly well. Scrolling back, scrolling back, scrolling back. Here we go. Richard, what's your opinion on Ford M90 or Chevy M90? Didn't I go over that at the beginning of this video? I talked about all the differences. There's way more GM M90s available. So I think that the Ford M90, looking at the discharge of it, it looks like the discharge might be a little better on the Ford one. I don't know about the inlet side of it, though. I'd have to take a look at that. Have you seen LS conversions on 914s and Fieros? Yes. Make an adapter plate to run an M90 on a 462 valve? Yes. I just find it fascinating. The 1940s engines has all the things we want on our 90s, 2000 engines, aside from electronics. Yeah, there were smart guys way back then, but even back then, whatever the blower question is, 1471 is the answer. That's right. You still have the Ford Racing Performance Supercharger manifold. I'll buy it, even though I know it didn't do much. If only I could find one on eBay. I don't have that blower anymore. That was a Ford Racing piece, and it's not available from them anymore, obviously, either. 1,600 pounds of Mini Cooper S. Those are cool. Float them and jet them. Both of those. You should have said float some and jet some. Come on. It's easy to, it was right there. Sure it would, especially without intercooler. Okay, Mark, you're welcome to try it. It showed nothing on the NA motor. It did nothing. Yeah, it's very small stones. The other thing to think about for Mark is that on an EFI port injected motor, there's also not a lot of time for charge cooling to take effect, even though we would change the temperature of the air, temperature of the fuel. Whereas on a carbureted combination, if you change the temperature of the fuel, and I'm not 100% convinced about that test either. I would like to see it done. I mean, they do a good job there for Engine Masters, but I still, it just makes me wonder if it's something else. You just want to risk it. Going over your videos, does the intake dictate the RPM peak more than a cam or heads? All I can say is it depends. If we have a stock cam and we put a short runner manifold on it, it's not going to want to make power out at 8,000. A leap year doesn't affect timing. It affects boost, though. Is your Fox a 4i? No, it's a good one. That's right. Shots at the 4i. Punch right in the eye, in the left one. No, mine's an 88. First year of the Mass Air, California only. That's what makes it the best. Okay, we're getting a poll for non-after live stream. How about just the final result? I skipped through the non-live stream. Okay. I know. Operator error is no excuse. Scrolling back. I'm scrolling back. I always go too far. Have you ever dynoed a stock supercharged 3800 to see if they're close to the factory rating? I have, but the way that we tested on the dyno is not the way that the factory runs them. The way that the factory tests is that with everything on it, the way that it is in the car, it's not in the car, it's on an engine dyno, but all the inlet system is there, the full exhaust, the cat, the accessories, it's run with the factory tune, it's run at the factory temperature, all that stuff. And all of that stuff has changed when I run it. So I would have to put all of that stuff on. And I think that they're even running the rack and all that stuff when they test it. So I would have to do all that, and it's just not worthwhile. $350 kilowatts is 476 horsepower. Okay, that's good. Boss 290 is 390 stock. I want 500-ish with a turbo. And the Boss 290 is a 4.6 or a 5.4. It doesn't matter. A GT35 will support 500 or 600 horsepower. So Inlet side of the Ford M90 is very interesting. I probably have a handful of Fox buys. I actually had a 93 SVT. Nice. So you had a Cobra then, a 93 Cobra? Was it a Cobra R? I got to drive one of those for a long time. There you go, Dean. Boss 290 is a 544 valve with a good intake. Yeah. I like those intakes. I do have intake envy on those. No replacement for displacement. What about a turbine engine? Dynamic mid-roll add insertion. That's okay. That's okay. That helps me out. It helps YouTube out, actually. Shadow Ops. Go past the building earlier, and there are 2 Triumphs in the rafters. Wow. Triumph bikes or Triumph cars? Were they TR6s? Were they Spitfires? I wanted a TR6 for a really long time. I was looking at them before I bought my Z that I bought. I don't know what the gigawatt conversion is. I'm sure it's pretty big, though. Scott, I want the fuel cooling to work, but after the testing, I just have my doubts. Scott, on the Super Coupe, the hat with the logo was a restriction and limited what I could get out of the engine. So the because they had hood clearance issues right there. So you think that a better inlet into that would be a better deal? It wasn't a Cobra R, just a Cobra. Yeah, those are cool. The Cobra R didn't have any more power. Didn't the Cobra R have a flat plane crank in '93? It had different suspension and interior stuff removed, and Shadow Ops, all that stuff is good. Tommy, all of that stuff will work fine for that power level. Ring gap, head gaskets, head studs. You're going to need injectors and a pump for that. A GT45 will be fine for that power level. Maybe on another day I'd be full of theories to throw out there, but other reasons. Yeah, that's okay. I just, like I said, we didn't see much of a change there. And being that the injectors are down at the port, there's not a lot of time for charge cooling to take effect. But we do see it with E85, but that's not really a temperature thing. The GT350, the new version of that, not the 60s through 1970, 65 through 70, the new version of that Ford put the flat plane crank in it. People are getting feisty. So good. Good times, good times. I brought my wife lunch today because she had a bunch of meetings, and the reason that I went over there actually is because she had there was somebody in one of the classes that brought a bearded dragon. So I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely want to come over and hold that. That's pretty cool. So I got to play with the bearded dragon. It was awesome. Terminator X stealth or sniper stealth. I don't know much about either one of those. I've used a Terminator X before. I don't know that I've used a sniper stealth. I've used HP and Dominator primarily because that's what we have. All my background theory crafted compute is obsessed with fabricating a custom crank trigger wheel and making all that work. What are you making what are you doing with the crank trigger? What are you making work with that? Danny, you have 4 bearded dragons? Cool. They are, Dan. Almost every boat is a displacement hull, right? All right, buddy, get back to work. Use a circular saw. Like my Terminator X, been driving it for 5 years. That's good. I've only used that a couple of times, and we only used it in a pinch because for some reason the HP was being used or something. Well, boss owns the racetrack in Canada where Ford dials in all the SVT stuff. The GT was developed there. That's cool. Nice, Dan. Keep it classy. T43 heads. I thought that was funny. If you take a look on social media, if you look at Facebook and stuff, Brian, the guys from Brian Tooley Racing, the people that they're working with, posted something on Facebook about the Cathedral Port head testing that they were doing, and somebody wrote in a Sharpie down on the corner 243. So they were saying that these are the baddest 243 heads in the planet. That's just good stuff, man. That's just good comedy. I was about to watch your video on injector choices on the LS. Yeah, not specific injectors, but just sizing probably. Is that the video? Sizing for different power levels? Would there be a possibility of testing videos on either system? On either system, what do you mean? Different ECUs? Different ECUs are not going to show anything on the dyno because any ECU, even including a stock one, will allow me to make the airfield that I want and the timing that I want. So we don't put an ECU really to the test to do that because I mean we could just do that with a carburetor and a distributor really. Overbuilt. Let's see here. Oh no, yeah, I actually sent that message to the wrong person. Sorry about that. That wasn't supposed to go to you. So disregard. That was somebody else that wants me to keep calling them and they haven't been around. I'm not worried. I saw your videos. 9 foot-pounds isn't enough to justify putting the 862s on. I may do the 862s with dual springs as the 243s have BTRB highs for the truck. Yeah, if you have, whatever head you have on your LS, you should keep that on your LS. The exception is a 317 head if you want to make more torque or whatever. Lots of guys replace those with other heads that have higher compression, and then they're a better choice for those. So is it possible with the inner chiller? Is an inner chiller something that's cooling the air before it goes into the supercharger? Is that what you're talking about? If that's the case, I've never tested one. I've never seen how well that works. I have my doubts about the amount of power that it takes to make something like that work. If the inner chiller is something that's the intercooler, then guys have made that kind of power on pump gas. Tom Nelson does that, but his stuff isn't a junkyard motor. Do you think oversized injectors running shorter duty cycles are beneficial? Yes, I do. I think that it's easier on the injector. Did it have door codes and numbers for the shop dogs? No. Yes, with the AC. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually not a fan of that. I think running the AC for while you're trying to run wide open throttle is not a good combination. But if people are doing it and they're having success, that's fantastic. The GT Plus 6, yep, that's good. Shadow Ops, an LQ4 uses the same as an injector as an LR4? Big 162. I don't know about the head gasket problem. Did they have problems with head gaskets because guys were turning the boost up so much? Overbuild. I thought I sent an email to you too, or I think I did send an email. Or no, maybe I'm confused about who I'm trying to deal with here. And on that note, we're going to close out our poll at, is the Ford M90 better than the GM M90? 56% are saying no. Wow. I need to find a 3.8 Mustang for $1,000 and put one of my M90s on it. I think that's going to be hard to do anymore. On that note, it is time to go. So hopefully everybody's had a good February. This is the last day. It is leap year, so it is the 29th. But I will be back tomorrow.